an awesome day. We're talking about the paradox of difference. Some of you, this is going to make no sense to, but I put this t-shirt on for a reason. I'm just going to share this. Like, this will make no sense. Some of you are like, I could not care less that you're wearing a Texas basketball shirt. All I'm going to say is, like, this is truly who I am. And if you don't know who this is, go look it up. This is who I am. This is who I attach myself, because I got connected to doing work in Austin, and I was like, I'm buying a Texas t-shirt. So there you go. But some of you will know a little better about what that's all about. So I want to just set the frame. It's interesting, as Daniel was saying, the purpose of this, before I introduce, it's already out there, Dr. Powell, but I'm going to give her introduction in just a second. But I want to just set the frame for some of this and give you a couple of my thoughts very quickly. One thing about this, that as Daniel was describing this, is I think that as I'm looking at your faces, this is more than a community of practice. I think this is a community of presence and purpose. That there is, that's what's been amazing about our time together. And Daniel said some of this, but the WiLD conversation is a space where we have been given permission, where we invite ourselves into permission to dive deeper into our assumptions regarding the nature of humanity and organizing. Because of who we are, it's a deeper examination of what is occurring at the intersection of psychology, of our experience of our world, and even of our deeper humanity, including our faith, our deepest yearnings, and our questions. But I think one of the things that's important in this conversation also is the fundamental framing is that of relationship. It's something that's kind of been striking me this week, is that it changes everything. And even in psychology, so often we study individual variables, but it looks different when we start to think about what that looks like in relationship to other people and what that's all about. I've been kind of deeply impacted. If you give me just a moment, like this last couple of weeks, I've been reading and listening to, some of you know who this is, by the work and thinking of a person. He's a theologian and philosopher named Walter Brueggemann. And he recently gave a talk at Fuller Theological Seminary. And listen to this. The title of it is The Law That Listens, which I think is really interesting. And where he describes this dialogic tension between the structures of our world and the living, breathing, and dynamic invitational relationships that are our spirit and lives together. So he actually makes it really like this conversation between these structures of our world that are a part of our life, which is the organizing stuff of our life, and then the part of us, this relational piece of us. But here's what he goes on to say, I think that's relevant to our conversation today. He makes this comment that the pressure on us will cause us to turn tensions into absolutes. I think that's really interesting. And it's like, if we don't have any intention, we will turn tensions, like these fundamental tensions of our humanity, into absolutes. And that it takes work to sort of keep the door open between those things. And this series has introduced some really important paradoxes in our journey toward wholeness. And today the paradox is the paradox of difference. And so I want to introduce Dr. Tiffany Powell. Has become a dear friend of mine and this is the way Tiffany, I describe us, who I text with ease. So if you want to know, like, friends of mine, it's like I text them with ease. Those are my definition of some of my closest friends, those with whom I can text with ease. And that means, like, just kind of just be myself. On the face of it, you might think that we don't have much in common. And we've been friends now for, Tiffany, maybe for a year, a little over a year. And if you, on the face of it, Black, white, woman, man, East Coast, West Coast. She studied elementary education. I studied industrial organizational psychology, but you would be missing so much of the sameness that it's actually nutty. And there's a lot to say there. Dr. Tiffany Powell is currently the director of the Arch Academic Programs at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. And she's a native New Yorker. Which is, by the way, what's so interesting is we got to know each other about just that. I grew up mostly in Seattle, some in Kentucky, and then for her to be from New York, but also having lived in different, so it's just different parts of the country. She's an educator with deep roots in K through 12 education. She was a diversity coordinator in Manhattan, Kansas, which is so funny because I was like, isn't Manhattan in Manhattan? And then it's also Dr. Powell was a professor in the School of Education at Russell Sage College in New York. She's active in publications. She's a keynote speaker. She's the founder and CEO of Dr. Tiff Speaks. I know it's like, when does she sleep? She holds a PhD in curriculum instruction. Like, I love this combination of educational background that makes this all this crazy combination. An MS in Master of Science in Math Education and a BA in Psychology and Elementary Education. She's also one of our executive fellows, which is so humbling to me that she's in that process and is 1/3 of the way through the executive fellows program. And fellows, like, give Tiffany a shout out because you all know her well. Her new, I want to just say one thing. Her new book, she has a new book out. This is amazing. It's called The Day My Soul Danced. And in the foreword by Reverend Addie Banks, she says this, which I think is, having read the first chapter of the book, it's just amazing. She says, this is what Reverend Banks says: "The day my soul danced is an offering." Like, that's kind of enough right there. Tiffany has placed her life on the altar, and where we are brought to the site, to observe the impact of consequential moments. And then she says this: "An altar is not simply a place of sacrifice. Altars also symbolize places where we have met with God, a place where a divine encounter occurs. Tiffany's transparency allows us a glimpse into those meetings with the holy, encouraging us to offer our own stories up to God, to look for the harvest within us that will perpetually feed our souls and become nourishment for others as well." You see why I wanted to read that? It's nuts. And I've just gotten a glimpse into what she's about. So, Dr. Powell, that's my long introduction. It was just really fun to do that. I'm just here to moderate this conversation. And so I have one question, is like, can you tell everybody, like, you and I didn't know each other a little over a year ago, and can you let them know just briefly about, like, your perspective on our friendship, but any, like, your deeper connections to the WiLD community? Where did this start?
Wow, that was amazing. I was wondering who you were talking about when you were reading that stuff, and because sometimes it's hard to hear those things about yourself. So I just want to say thank you, Rob, Dr. McKenna. Thank you so much. Thank you to the WiLD community just for having me. And I want to say that my relationship with the WiLD was the greatest surprise of 2020, because I sort of rolled into the work because of another colleague at RPI that said, "Hey, we have this toolkit. We have these folks at WiLD. Someone met them and they're like, oh, yeah, this would be really good for our students." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, we're in a pandemic. So, why not? Let's just try something new." And so I remember actually my first conversation was with Daniel, and he gave me just a great overview of the program. And I thought, okay, this is cool. And I started coming to the Fridays, and that was it. I went through the intensive with the purpose of really helping the RPI students. But I realized that it was like, this is for me. This is a lifeline for me. Like, I feel like I'm being all the more enriched because of this relationship. And I would say that it was because of I would say, even Rob, your transparency, your openness, your ability to just engage, that really invited me to do so as well. And so as we were having some conversations in the chat, because the chat is a live place, I just want you to know there's some meaningful things that happen in the chat. And we were in the chat and I said something and you responded to me like, "This is good. We need to talk about this." And the next thing you know, we have these other conversations that just unfold, that gave us an opportunity to just find so many other connection points between us. And that was the beginning, I think, of a beautiful connection and just a powerful friendship that I'm blessed to have as well. So while you say you're blessed, I'm pretty blessed as well. So I'm grateful.
Thank you. Thank you, Tiffany. This is so fun. So we've been having these conversations, and by the way, Tiffany and I are working on a white paper on this concept of the paradox of difference. And so some of this thinking is just, but with regard to that paradox of difference, where do you want us to begin? Like, lead us in. Like, what have you been thinking about related to this, that would help us?
Yeah, I think about the idea of difference, and fundamentally, difference has become synonymous with barriers, right? And so things and people that are different, they separate themselves. And that's why we have these labels, and we label this and that, and you're this or you're that. Even like your t-shirt analogy, right? Which is like fun, but it's like, I'm with this team, I'm with that team. Imagine if your shirt just said basketball. That was it. And that was it. It didn't matter which team. But the idea is there is this piece of us that this the way that kind of we're designed, where difference is not always embraced. And so the question that has been looming for me is, what would change if we intentionally started looking for sameness, those things that are similar among difference? And so while you earlier described the ways in which we're different. I'll even add this: you have two sons, I have two daughters. Okay, so that's another added difference to us, right? And so we see the world probably in maybe different ways and have different lenses. But because we invited or took the time to be responsive to the invitation to dialogue, we found so many other similarities. We love the we both have we love to kind of sort of spar with information. We love being able to dance around ideas that seem to be paradoxical. Like we both like that. Like, let's dig a little deeper. What do you think that means? Like, we love that. And we would not have been able to find that place of dialogue and sameness had we not come to the place of being willing to let us put aside anything that may have seemed to be different between us. And so I think that there is a power and a beauty in sameness. And I use that word sameness because you can use the word similarity as well or commonalities, but it's something about there's a sameness. And people often unite around what's the same about them. So you think about your friends, you chose them because they like things that are probably similar to you, right? And so, and you always have that one friend in a group just like, you know what, she's the different one or he's the different one. You know, you kind of keep them around because, you know, you get some benefit from them. Like you do enjoy things about them, but they're a little bit different. But what if we intentionally looked at who are the different people in my spheres? Who are the different people around me? What are the different ideologies? And how can I be intentional about looking for ways that we can be common and we can make a connection? Because people do connect around commonalities. That's just a fact, right? And so I think the opposite can be true or the reverse can be true. Sometimes we make assumptions that because we have the same perspectives, live in the same neighborhood, look the same, speak the same language, that there's no difference between us. And sometimes we're alarmed when that difference shows up. Like, what do you mean that you see the world differently? What? We came from the same block. We came from the same neighborhood. We from the same school. What do you mean what? And sometimes we're put off by the notion of that difference. And so I think so you can use it, it's very interchangeable. And I think that's what the beauty of it is. And I would love to have people think about when they have taken the time to say, this person is different, and I want to embrace that. I'm intentionally looking for you because it's something different about how you see the world. But then how can I be appreciative of your difference while also recognizing that there's things that we have in common that can make us really friends, can make us become friends or respectful of one another. Even if you don't get to the place of friendship, just being respectful of the fact that you see the world differently and we do have some things that are in common as well. So I think that that's my big question for today. And we can talk more about it, but that's where I am with it. And I love that. I think it's a very invitational opportunity for all of us today.
So one of the things, there's a lot to unpack there. That question, will you say the question again, by the way?
Yes. What would change if you started to intentionally look for sameness among differences?
Yeah, so interesting. Because one of the things I thought about and I've, asked you questions about, I told you, is that sometimes I think I was always drawn to, I don't know if you guys remember the claymation series from those Christmas claymation stories, and there was the Island of Misfit Toys.
Yes.
And I think I feel drawn to misfits. And I think because I'm always looking for them because I've oftentimes felt like one.
Mm.
I saw a post on Facebook the other day from two women who are still friends. I moved from Seattle in a very urban community when I was in ninth grade to Kentucky, to a very, very rural community. So I could not, I saw this post from these two women that are still friends, and I met them in English class. And I just sent them I was grateful for them. I haven't talked to them since, but I just saw this thing on Facebook, and I expressed gratitude because I remember that I felt such a misfit. Just culturally speaking, I had never heard people say "you all" one time, let alone in every sentence. And just feeling that sense of just not really knowing what to do with it. And I think there's so many places where I have felt different, and it might surprise people. And I've always kind of looked for misfits, but I don't think everybody feels that way. Do you have any, I know you've encouraged me, but I was thinking about people, I think probably more people whose faces I'm looking at right now probably feel like misfits more often than we think.
Yeah.
Like, What would you say to us?
I would say, I saw someone saying a quote like "Misfits unite," like because I feel like in each in our own way, we probably have felt like we didn't fit into a space, and I think that that's okay. I know on my own personal journey, I've learned to be okay with not fitting into every space. Like I'm not designed to do that. And I think that that is the uniqueness that we bring to those spaces is what makes us who we are. And I think it's important to find some similarities with other people, like find some other people that think about the world differently, that may see themselves as a misfit, if you would, or as a outlier in some way, find ways to unite. But I think that in the midst of that, we can still be open to say, how about even in the way that I see myself, how can I find something in you that we can connect on that will make us just more united and more supportive of one another. And so we do have to keep in mind that there's issues of oppression and there's other things that do happen that kind of separate people. But I think that just on human interactions, you know, this is a big topic, right? But I think that one of the layers is like, how can I personally be intentional about what I'm doing? I can't be responsible for other people all the time, but I can be responsible for me. So for those that feel like they don't fit in, that's probably good because that's what makes you different. That's what makes you special. And you'll find your tribe. Like I feel like in a lot of ways, WiLD is like my tribe. I found my people. I found people who think similarly to me. And even on a professional realm, you don't always feel like you fit in. Being in higher ed and having all the different experiences I've had has sometimes made me feel like I don't fit in here. And I maybe have tried to, and then I realized I don't have to try to anymore. I'm who I am. And there's going to be somebody who appreciates that uniqueness, and that's what they're going to be drawn to. And I would encourage other people to do the same.
Can you, one of the things I would love for have you to speak on, and I want to have a final question I want to finish with so we get out to conversations, because I know you're igniting, there's a lot of thinking going on. I can only imagine what's going on in everybody's brains right now. Let me read what I wrote down that I wanted to ask you about is, tell us about your challenge, the hope and the opportunities you see as a professional and a leader who has been deeply invested in the entire diversity and equity and inclusion world. What have you seen and what do you hope to see that is oftentimes not happening? Maybe I don't want to go into like complaining about what's not happening, but what do you see even from practitioners in that space that you hope that they would, as they venture into this paradox of difference?
Yeah. So that's a huge question. But what I will attempt to do to answer is to say that my hope for organizations who want to engage around the diversity, equity, and inclusion work is to recognize that it's not a one-time thing, that it's not a one program, one workshop, sort of like you have, even if you did a set of workshops, it's deeper because it's heart work, it's mind work. It's not program based in the sense of you do this program, you check it off the box, and you kind of move away from it. It becomes transformational because it impacts the way that we do everything around us. It's the way in which we even talked about the quote that you use about tensions and moving tensions into absolutes and the danger of doing that, because there is a tension, but it doesn't have to be an absolute that you have to stay there. So my encouragement to those who are interested in moving forward in that space is to recognize that it's ongoing work that happens with the leader. The leaders go first, right? Leaders go first. So how are leaders thinking about themselves and being willing to be transformed and asking themselves the tough questions and evaluating their own relationships with their team so that they can be better and be examples of better. This way, when you enlist resources, you have it from a lens of, this is the work that I'm doing. How can you help me to be better at this? And not expecting someone to come in to fix something. It's not a fixable thing. It's transformational, and you grow and you evolve with every decision that you make with it.
It's good. It's good. So this is something just to give you all a sense for, like, one of the things that Tiffany kind of blows me away sometimes with just when she writes stuff out, it's incredible. And she said something to me that was pretty, it kind of is a thing that centers you in terms of your own purpose. And she said, if I could take, and this was regard to our work. And so when someone speaks to your work this way, because we get often asked, like, what is the relevance of the WiLD toolkit to the DE&I conversation that's happening in our world and what's happening in organizations? And Tiffany, you said this, if I could take an organization or a school through the toolkit and have them connect that back to the way they interact with their Black, brown, or white students, it would change the way they breathe. And I was like, well, that's I don't even, we don't have time to unpack that, but I just want to tell you like that deeply rooted me in my why. You know, it was just like, it was a powerful thing that you said. And so I'm grateful for that, because I think some of you have been through what we're attempting to do in creating this conversation. Is you'll understand what she means by that. And I want to finish with this. So so you just finished this book. I'm psyched to read it. Will you tell me about why you wrote the book and who you hope will read it? And then we will jump out into conversation.
Yes. The book is different. The book is about my story. It's about my personal life, and it's not about my professional accolades or experiences. And I'm not quoting research. I'm telling my real story. And that's the first thing that I think is so powerful. It's different in that regard. It was a leap. It was a brave leap. When you're in academia, you're expected to write research-based stuff, not to talk about your personal life and your hindrances and things that sort of tripped you up. But what I know that I think is the most powerful thing about it is it offers hope. That despite what you have going on, despite your regular circumstances, despite who your family is, despite who was with you and who said they were going to be with you and decided that they didn't want to anymore, whatever, life happens. So in addition to your professional journey, there's a personal, there's a spiritual journey, and there is light at the end of that tunnel. This book is for anyone, male or female, although I would say it probably leans more toward the female perspective because I deal with female issues and I am a female. But I think a man can embrace this as well, because men and women alike have experienced disappointment. They've experienced rejection. They've experienced maybe not knowing what to do in the next for the next around the next corner. And this book offers a roadmap to finding your own voice. Just hearing a little bit of my story, but finding your own voice, finding your own rhythm, and dancing to it.
That's good. That's good. All right, let's go.